there's a lot to choose from, and we usually tend to pick the best of the best. What a lot of brokers do here that's awful, in my opinion, is client says, hey, I got 300,000. That's my budget. They find them everything that fits in 300,000 and they send it to them and say, pick one. And you're like, okay, no. There's more to it than just budget. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Living the Dream podcast, Mexico lifestyle and real estate. Morning, Matt.
Good morning. What's going on?
Had a busy week in Toronto. We went to visit a lot of realtors out in Ontario there.
Oh my goodness. That was probably the busiest event. It was called Realtor Quest. And apparently there's over 10,000 people who came by. We had a booth there sharing how investors can earn amazing returns, live the dream, use the property of their friends and family. Yeah. And we are absolutely swamped, not with just Zoom calls, but people texting, calling. It is insane the amount of interest of investors and agents even looking to buy themselves and bring money down.
I'm still tired.
Yeah.
From that last week.
We can do this. We can get through this because on today's episode, we are going to be talking about the steps and the processes of actually buying down here from A to Z. So from just curious to actually getting keys to your unit, getting property management, getting it rented out and starting earning returns. So Super exciting.
So I think the first thing to mention is it's a different process than in Canada. It's a lot more manual. And definitely having somebody here that's boots on the ground is super important because unfortunately, and I hate saying this to clients, and I always do, is there's a lot of brokers here, realtors, that they just want to get a deal. And once you send the down payment,
adios. They're gone.
You see them walking on the street and then that they're still here, but they just don't help the client with the next steps. Like, I'll give you an example before we get into the steps. Right now I'm helping one of my clients figure out her maintenance fees because there's a few things missing in her unit, and then water and CFE. And then another client just messaged me, hey, can you get the electricity guy to come and set up my AC? And another client's messaging, hey, I need solar panels on my villa. I'm like, but it's part of what we do, right? Yeah. It's something that's super important. And a lot of brokers here, unfortunately, they don't help with any of that. They literally ignore, I've seen it. And I've had clients actually send me screenshots where they send 18 messages to their broker. And
isn't that crazy? One of the reasons we started Elements Real Estate Group was to bring North American standards to Mexico. And it is different when you're buying in a different country. You need to have somebody always in your corner. Yeah. Right. And even I was just dealing with a client with insurance. Yeah. How does insurance work?
It's on us, the onus, then, not on the clients, right? Because That's why we've created this company, so that we take on all of that mayhem for them so that they don't have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I call it the ecosystem. Yeah. Right? It's not just this, finding the right property, doing the down payment, getting keys is just one part of this ecosystem. The other part is okay, now how do I get it set up like I would back in Canada?
All right. So let's get into that. I think that's a good place to start, is how, if somebody's in Canada right now, they're stressed out about investing, capital gains tax, high interest rates, yada, yada.
Tax,
yeah. Capital T-A-X-E-S. So anyways, let's say somebody's like, listen, I've got $500,000 sitting in equity, or I just offloaded this property. I've got another $500,000. What do I do with it? I want to buy a property in Mexico. What's my first step? So what's the first step?
Well, the first step is reaching out to us. Obviously, because we actually know what we're doing. We are from Canada. We get what is necessary in order to make a successful transaction down here. So step one is reaching out to us. And from there, we find out what that client actually needs.
How do you do that? How do you do the next step? So now the client's reached out to us, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, podcast, Facebook, whatever the case may be. Client's like, hey, I'm interested in buying something. What's the next step?
Next step is either if they're here, they swing by our office and say hi, because we have a beautiful office here. The second is a Zoom call. So we do a 15-minute exploratory Zoom call, and we get to know what that client is looking for, because it's not just all investment. There are people looking to relocate or vacation rental properties. They want to be by the beach or on the beach. Some people want more jungle feel. Like there's an array of different options.
Plus, they get to see our beautiful faces,
Well,
right?
of
That's
course.
the main goal. Okay.
Of course.
So client reached out, client booked a Zoom call. We find out what the client wants, what the client needs, how much the client wants to spend, if the client's going to be financing, if not, all of that stuff. What's the next step after that?
So the next step is we get to work. And it's really important to know, like, we have access to over 400 different developments here, right?
And resales.
And resales, of course. Those are 400 new developments taking place all within the Riviera Maya, which includes Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Tulum, Venturas, Puerto Morelos, all these other places. And I would say we really only work with 25 to 35 different developers at a time because we have our own set of criteria that is super, super important, right, to us. And that is, one, we have to know the developer. We have to have seen their working quality before. Okay.
Not only here, though, but like across the country.
Anywhere,
Yeah.
right? It could be in Monterey, Merida, Puerto Vallarta, wherever. We had to have seen some sort of their work, construction, how it's held up. So quality is super, super important. Location, obviously, because there are some developments that are out in the middle of nowhere and they're charging crazy prices. If you don't know what you're doing down here, you can kind of get caught up in that.
Yep.
Another big one is communication. Right? Communication. If we send a message to one of the reps or send a message to the developer, we need to hear back that day.
Yeah.
Right? Our clients expect to have an answer at least within a day or two at most, right? So, and you're laughing because I know there are a few that, send a message, send an email, a text, next day, same thing, next day, same thing. You don't hear back for a week. They immediately go on our blacklist.
Yeah.
So we have this blacklist internally with our team where it's just, we will not touch that developer because 80% of our business is referrals.
Yep.
And we want to sell a good quality product that's going to last, that's going to have really good returns for years and years to come. So they tell their friends and family about it. So with that all being said, based on what the client is looking for, we then go into our database. We look at an array of different resales. We look at different pre-constructions available in the areas that they're looking at that we have quality, and we narrow it down based on price and what their budget and time frame is. And we then bring that to them and go through it in more detail.
Okay. So client gets in touch with us. Client tells us what we need, what they need. We find them the best options. How many options do we typically send to clients? Do we send all 20 to 35 developers that we work with, or do we send them a smaller portion?
We send them a smaller portion.
Okay, good.
Right.
And the reason for that is because there's a lot to choose from, and we usually tend to pick the best of the best. What a lot of brokers do here that's awful, in my opinion, is client says, hey, I got 300,000. That's my budget. That's what I want. The brokers literally go into our broker portals here. They find them everything that fits in 300,000 as a 2-bedroom, and they send it to them and say, pick one. And you're like, okay, no. Just because, there's like so many more factors. Like, you're better off buying a beautiful 1-bedroom luxury penthouse for that price rather than a 2-bedroom mid-floor in a white building that's like basic.
That has 250 units, the exact same
one, right? There's more to it than just budget, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? It also goes to, again, back to the client, their personality.
Yeah.
Right? If they're a young couple that wants to be close to the beach, close to the action and fun, that's going to be a different set of options than if it's a retiree couple that might be spending 6-7 months there that want more peace and quiet, right? And more tranquility. So there's options for everything. But even though there's lots of options, we have to narrow it down at some point, or else the client will get overwhelmed. Yeah. They'll get tired. They'll get stressed. And
there's some of these emails where it's like they get like 18 options sent for them from another broker. It's like, but I mean, at one point, if I'm buying a place in Dubai per se, and I'm looking at a broker, and the broker, I tell him, listen, I want this, I want that, I want this is how much I have, and he sends me 18 options, I'm gonna be like, listen, I'm looking forward for your guidance, not here's a menu, pick. I'm like, you should tell me which ones out of these 18 should be my top 3. Yeah. From those top 3, I can then pick which one makes more sense, and where we go to the next step. So speaking of that, what's the next steps? Let's say the client now received his top 5 options from you, from any of our brokers. What is the next step of, okay, I like building A. or complex A? What do I do next?
Okay, so if you've narrowed it down to like, yep, this is the one, it fits, it checks all the boxes, we're ready to go, there's what's called a reservation fee. Okay, and this varies, but it's typically between $1,000 to $5,000. Most are $5,000. And the reservation fee basically is almost like an intent to purchase, an intent to do the due diligence. So they take the $5,000, they wire it down here. Actually, before that, there's an offer sheet.
Yes.
So that's pretty important. So the offer sheet is done up. It has the name of the client, all their information, the unit type, square footage, and what the payment plan is, especially if now we're talking about pre-construction, right? So typically 30% down, 60% during the course of construction, and 10% on deed and title and closing. And so once the offer sheet is accepted by the client and accepted by the seller or the developer, which is both signed, then the $5,000 reservation fee is due. So the client would go to their bank. We give them all the instructions. They wire the $5,000. Once it lands in the developer's account, we get a receipt and we send that to the client.
Trust account.
The trust account, yes.
So the client says, I want this unit. Let's put an offer in. Is the offer an official binding document?
It is an intent to purchase, to
Correct.
do the due diligence. So
Correct.
when that is signed, until they receive the funds, then no. Okay.
So the offer in Mexico, just so everybody knows, in Canada and the US, when you submit an offer and it's accepted, that is it. You are bound to buy that. There's a bunch of penalties if you don't. In Mexico, it's very different. An offer and a reservation fee are not the legal binding document. It is the purchase agreement that comes afterwards, the contract. So the contract, once everything's been approved, agreed upon, once the contract is signed, that is then the binding official document. So now, okay, the client's offer is good. Developer said yes. Client said yes. They wire the $5,000. We help them out with the wiring of the $5,000. It's a process. We all know that. I mean, you were just doing that the other day.
Yep.
So now that $5,000 landed into the developer's trust account. The next step is the developer provides us with a
Promissory agreement.
Exactly. And during that promissory agreement, what does our legal team do? The legal team that we work with in our office here, they check everything of the developer.
Yeah. There's one thing that I've noticed that's a constant. Every promissory agreement we've ever received from a developer that comes to our clients and to our legal team is always in favor of not us, but the developer.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, and there's certain little things. It's nothing major, but there's certain things that are kind of always in there that's why it's extremely important to work with a really solid legal team that know what they're doing. They deal with foreigners all the time on the purchase here.
Yep.
And they go through it, they mark it up, and what we love about it is that they all speak perfect English. The contract is in Spanish as well as in English.
Yes, the Spanish version is the official binding version, but the English version is more of a compulsory translation.
It's like a translation of it, but it's on the same page.
Yes.
It's on the same document, you sign everything. So they go through everything, mark it all up. Now, while we're waiting, if we take one step back, while we're waiting for the promissory agreement from the developer to arrive, that is when we would then connect you to our legal team.
Yes.
Okay. And there's something called an engagement letter. You do a Zoom call with them, make sure that everything is good, answer any questions that you might have. And they typically range from anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000 to do the due diligence on the contract.
And it's honestly pretty important. Like, I still use my legal team to do all of my purchases, even though I've been living here for 11 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh, should probably save $2,000 and not do this. Like, no, never.
We won't work with clients who don't do it.
No.
Like,
you must.
You have to when you're buying. And I think most clients want to, or most purchasers, buyers want to do the due diligence. And it's...
Go ahead. Sorry, I've got it. That just...
You got it? Yeah.
Yeah,
you
go
just
ahead.
snap at me?
No, I just
What
had a
was
good
that?
idea. I'm like, you're right. I have got an idea.
So with that being said, you find the right legal team to help you out, and then the contract arrives. You've already engaged them to start working on your behalf. They go through the due diligence, and then typically a conditional period, if you will, is about 15 business days.
Business days, very important topic.
So about 3 weeks.
15 business days. We try to get it in within 15 business days because there's been deals where it's been taken forever, like 4 months to close, and clients get annoyed, developers get annoyed. So we're all trying to make it go much faster now. And developers are starting to cancel transactions, send the 5K back and say, if you guys don't close within 15 business days, we're going to sell to somebody else. One little point before we move on to our final steps is, if you're purchasing down here, and we already know which legal teams are good, our associate legal team is great, I highly urge you to send the contract to your legal team in the US and Canada to have your lawyer review it. But please understand that your legal team in the US and Canada knows legalities in the US and Canada. They are not familiar with the legalities of Mexico. So if I'm buying a property in France, I am not going to ask my Mexican legal team to review my French contract in France.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Like, and you know what, surprisingly, and if you're watching this right now, you might think, well, yeah, duh. It happens.
Oh.
It happens, and sometimes the legal team down here is talking to the legal team in Canada or the US, and it's like, the Mexican legal team's like, guys, this is not how it works. It is different down here, etc.
I've lost $1 million deal once because that's a $1.2 million transaction because the legal team in Canada advised against it without even talking to the legal team here.
Yeah.
They just said, oh, no, Mexico, no. So I was like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, and it's also really important to note that when you hire a legal team down here, they don't work for us.
No.
They don't work for the developer or the seller.
They work for the client.
They represent you and only you. So a lot of the Zoom calls are actually, unless you want us as a client, want us on the calls,
it's usually between
exactly. And then after the call, we can discuss or any changes or whatever.
Like we're obviously quarterbacking the whole transaction. We see everything. We see the conversation between the clients and the legal team. But usually, like you say, that happens between them and then the next step. So now due diligence is all good. They've checked the public registry. They checked that there's no liens, there's no debts, there's no lawsuits against the developer. The developer's delivered on time. We've talked about the times of delivery, penalties, all of that and more. Great. Client signs, developer signs. Then it's time for the
money.
Down payment. So you send 30% down back to the same account, which is the trust account of the developer. And then the payment plan starts afterwards. And then what do you do afterwards? You've paid your money, you've signed the contract. What do you do next?
Tell everybody to come talk to Matt and Lev at the Elements Real Estate Group because they were awesome.
Pretty much.
Okay. Once the down payment is done, some developers or developments will be done in a year or two, or even now pushing 2.5, 3. And so there's a payment schedule in the contract. And we, as a brokerage and team, we remind you at least 7 days prior to each payment that's due with a text,
and so does the developer,
email, and the developer reminds you. It's very, very important that the payment is done prior to the date or on the date and receipt is sent in. It's very, very important that that is done. And then, we basically kind of help you along the way, answer any questions, of course. And then typically when it gets within 3-4 months prior to completion, then a few other things start coming up, like furniture, decoration, insurance, how to get your electrical bill set
property
up.
Management.
Property
taxes.
management.
You know what I tell clients when they send a down payment? You don't have to hear my stupid voice anymore till you get keys. And they're like, thank God. Oh my God. You've been talking to us for the last 2 months. I don't want to hear you anymore. So
we also really like updating our clients because it's exciting for us, right? When we see something, especially in pre-con, go from a jungle, they survey the land, they start clearing, the walls start going up, the pools start taking shape.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, as we're on tour, maybe with other clients, we stop by, we take a video.
Oh,
send it
I've
to
done
you,
that all the time. It's pretty special when you get to see it. Like initially you send, like it's dirt.
Yeah.
And like rocks. And then it's like, whoa, look at this 3-bedroom villa and this pool. You're like, how?
Yeah, and then the greenery starts coming in, and the front doors just start opening. There's security there. There's just like the waterfalls, whatever it might be.
I think we should do another episode of like deliveries and also renders versus photos and like the actual product and what that aspect looks like, because everyone thinks it's just you buy it and then you get it. Oh my God, there is so much more to talk about when you actually get keys. I actually feel that like secondary part, it takes more work, it takes more energy than to actually finding the property, getting it set up, getting it properly managed, getting photos done, getting
Absolutely.
keys done, getting like, oh, there's a little paint splash that they need to remove.
Final walkthrough, right?
Yeah,
All the little
inspections.
details.
I just did one yesterday, and it's like, yeah, it's a lot. So we'll talk about that on another episode. And I think, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think this episode was just mainly about how to get started. Like if you're curious, and again, step one is that initial exploratory Zoom call, right? And it's the key word is exploratory. See if it's something for you, if it makes sense, and obviously reach out to us on our socials. We're here. We're real people. This is our office. You can swing by anytime in Playa del Carmen, but.
Don't forget Robert De Niro, if you're listening to this, reach out. He'd love to have you on the podcast, my man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the process. Obviously, we talked a lot today about the details of the process. There's a lot more to dive into. So if you are in the market and you want to get your hands on the property here, whether it's a beautiful studio for $150,000 or a $8 million beachfront villa, we have access to them all. Once again, my name is Lev. I'm the co-founder of the Elements Group, and this is
Matt, the other co-founder of the Elements Group. Thank you for watching. Living the dream, everything Mexico, lifestyle, and real estate.
Follow us on all our social media, and see you guys later.